What if the soul's greatest mistake is not knowing it has died? The heart stops, but the gestures continue. Doors open where there are no rooms. Footsteps echo down empty halls. Some spirits move past the veil, but never realize they've crossed it. They linger, confused, quiet, searching for something that's no longer here. What if the soul doesn't know it has died? The truth no one talks about. This is a mystery few dare to enter. Not a punishment, but a pause. Not a curse, but a longing. If you've ever felt the presence of someone who left, maybe they haven't gone as far as you think, and maybe this message is for you. Welcome to Bible Stories and Mysteries, where faith meets the unseen, and silence begins to speak. If your spirit stirs at these words, share this message, leave a comment and subscribe, because the spiritual world whispers, and only the quiet heart can hear. There are deaths that do not feel like endings. The body stills, but the soul remains caught, not in pain, but in repetition. Opening the same door, lighting a switch that sparks no light, calling out to voices that no longer respond. It is not a ghost story, it's a spiritual blindness, a soul that does not yet realize it has stepped into eternity. The church teaches that death is the separation of soul and body. But what it rarely speaks of is awareness. Does every soul know it has died? And if not, what happens in that confusion? Saints and mystics have long whispered of this state, souls wandering familiar paths, sitting in chairs long gone, trying to speak with lips no longer heard. There is no physical suffering, but a weight of silence. Why doesn't anyone answer me? Why does everyone pass by? These souls are not evil. They are not damned. They are simply lost in the last scene of their earthly life, still moving through habits and spaces as if nothing changed. Trapped in a dream where time has paused, but memory continues. Some call it limbo, others call it purgatory. But truly, it is a fog of the heart, a space between realization and surrender. A soul caught in what was, unable to see what is. And the reason? Sometimes it's something as quiet as a question never asked. What if I'm already gone and didn't notice? If this mystery has stirred something in you, like this video, or write, "I hear the silence" in the comments. Because some echoes aren't echoes at all. They are souls waiting to be heard. Not every soul is stopped by chains. Some remain simply because they loved too deeply and did not know how to let go. There are mothers who never leave, still watching over their children. Fathers who silently guard the homes they built. Spouses who stay just in case their loved one needs them again. Not from obligation, but from unfinished tenderness. Heaven does not rush the soul. God does not force entry. He waits, patiently, reverently, for the soul to decide. And some, even when faced with the brightness of eternity, whisper, "What if they still need me? What if I vanish forever?" These are not souls in rebellion, but souls in resistance. Still wrapped in their final roles, their last promises, their undelivered care. The kind of love that never surrendered, even to death. But love, when it clings, becomes a weight. And even beauty can turn into burden when it does not release. That's why the church teaches, grief belongs not only to the living, but to the dead, because sometimes the one who passed still holds tight to their mission. The mother who watched over her child every night does not know how to stop. The protector still feels responsible for a home that no longer hears his steps. These souls are not forbidden from crossing. They choose to linger, not out of fear, but devotion. And yet, that very devotion can become a spiritual delay. Heaven honors free will, even after the last breath, which is why some remain in an invisible purgatory. A space not made of fire, but of memory, of worry, of too much love that didn't know how to say goodbye. This is not sin, it is sacred excess. But even sacredness must yield to trust. There comes a moment when the soul must say, Now I trust. Now I let go. And in that surrender, the light begins to open. Have you ever lit a candle not knowing why? Felt a presence watching over you gently with no fear? Maybe someone stayed behind, not to haunt, but to hold. If this speaks to you, comment, "I still feel their love." Share this message. Someone's soul may be waiting for your prayer. There are homes that feel heavier than they should. Rooms where the air doesn't move, where silence lingers like a presence. Places that seem to hold not just furniture, but longing. Have you ever entered a room and felt watched? Not with fear, but with sorrow. As if something or someone had stayed behind, unable to leave. Some souls remain attached not just to people, but to spaces, to objects, to promises unfulfilled, words left unsaid, corners filled with memory. A sealed letter, a photograph never taken down, a wedding dress still in the closet after 40 years. These are not just things, they are vessels of emotion. And the soul, in its confusion, clings to them like anchors. The window where someone waited for a son to return, the chair where a father sat every evening, the doorway where a last goodbye was whispered. These moments, so full of life, leave imprints on time. Christian tradition has long understood this mystery. That's why homes were always blessed. A crucifix above the bed, holy water in the corners, prayers whispered at night. Because faith knows the invisible is not far, it is near. And if left unguarded, a house can hold more than memory. It's not superstition, it's spiritual intelligence. The soul, though separated from the body, can still linger, especially when the heart remains tied to earthly concerns, unpaid debts, unspoken apologies, guilt, or unresolved love. These things are not just emotional, they can become spiritual anchors. When someone dies holding tightly to something unfinished, their soul may not feel free to move forward, not because heaven denies them, but because they cannot yet release. The problem is not in the room, it's in the heart, because where there is no closure, there is often no peace. If you've kept a room untouched, if a drawer still holds their favorite scarf, if you talk to a photograph as if someone still hears, you may not be wrong. They might still be listening, but there comes a time when even love must let go, not to forget, but to free, not to lose, but to open the way. If someone you love never said goodbye, say it now. Light a candle, speak their name. Let them know they are remembered, but also released. Comment, "I set you free with love," if this speaks to your soul. And share this with someone whose house holds more than silence. There is a kind of loneliness no living person understands. The loneliness of a soul no one remembers. No more candles, no more names whispered in prayer, no more masses offered. The church has never asked us to pray for the dead as a symbolic gesture. It is an act of real spiritual charity, a lifeline thrown into the invisible. Because some souls carry burdens too heavy to shed alone, and when no one prays, the way becomes darker, slower, more silent. The saints knew this. They spoke of the souls in purgatory as patients in a hospital, not punished, but healing, not cursed, but waiting for light. And sometimes they wait on us, a whispered Hail Mary, a rosary said with tears, a single mass offered in their name. These become golden threads through the veil, reaching places our feet cannot go, but where our love still walks. St. Padre Pio often saw souls lifted out of suffering during the moment of consecration. As the chalice was raised, tears were wiped, chains were broken, light flooded the unseen. Heaven hears every prayer offered in love and answers them with mercy. Have you ever dreamed of someone who passed, but the dream felt different, more vivid than usual? They looked at you without speaking, or you woke up in tears, feeling something had just happened. Sometimes that's not just grief, it's a soul reaching out, asking for help in the only way they can. A flickering candle, a clock that stops, a sudden scent with no source. These are not always random. For the believer, they are signs, whispers from a soul waiting at the edge of time. And when we respond, with prayer, with compassion, something shifts, not just in them, but in us. The Mass is not only remembrance, it is real. The altar touches eternity. Christ is offered once more, not in blood, but in boundless love. And when a soul is named in that sacrifice, the heavens bend, angels move, and the chain around a waiting soul begins to fall away. If you've ever felt the urge to pray without knowing why, you may have answered a soul's silent cry. Comment, "I lift you in prayer," if you've ever felt the invisible call. Share this video, you might awaken someone's light through your prayer. There is a moment, soft as breath, hidden like dew, when the soul begins to realize something has changed. Not everything looks different, but nothing responds. The door opens, but no wind stirs. The name is spoken, but no one turns. The routine continues, but the warmth is gone. It is not sudden, not a trumpet blast revelation. It begins like a quiet weariness in the spirit, a gentle crumbling of certainty. Many souls spend what feels like years in this pause, but eventually something in them shifts. A small ache opens, not from grief, but from realization. I don't belong here anymore. It doesn't come as fear, it comes as fatigue. The soul begins to sense that the time it knew has passed, that the gestures are no longer met, that the world it once held is now slipping beyond reach. This is the awakening. The soul stops knocking on doors that never open, stops calling names that never return, and slowly, painfully, begins to turn inward, to ask, where am I? What have I become? And then, in that silence, something breaks, not violently but beautifully. A wall crumbles, a veil lifts, and the soul speaks its first true word, I let go. That surrender is not dramatic. It is often whispered with tears, not of sorrow but of release. The angels who have waited nearby, watching with patience as old as stars, begin to move, not rushing, but ready. They offer memories, not of regret but of grace. Moments when the soul once touched eternity in life, a kind word, a silent prayer, a time they forgave without being asked. These memories are not judgments, they are doors, each one a step toward home. And when the soul sees, truly sees, that it has not been abandoned, that the silence was not punishment but invitation, it begins to walk, not outward, but upward. Have you ever felt that someone close to you had finally found peace, even before you knew why? Maybe you were sensing a soul awakening. Maybe you were part of the light that helped them see. Comment, I believe the soul remembers, if this resonates in your spirit. And please, share this. It might be the sign a soul has been waiting for. Then the silence deepens, not as absence, but as invitation. A quiet so full it feels like being held, and the soul, now awakened, does not resist, not because it understands everything, but because something within says, it's time. There is no blaze of light, no golden gate, no choir of angels singing in triumph, only presence, a warmth that grows not from outside, but from within, as if love itself had wrapped around the soul, whispering, you are not lost. This is the crossing, not of distance, but of recognition. The soul no longer clings to what it once called life. The home, the roles, the fears, they begin to fade, not by force, but because the soul sees they no longer hold truth. Here, many souls weep, not from sadness, but from clarity. The kind of weeping that comes when everything finally makes sense. Every unanswered prayer, every silence, every pain, now seen through the lens of mercy. Some saints described it as a divine embrace without arms. Others as a plunge into light that does not burn, but transforms. And in that light, the soul begins to understand. It was never alone, not for a moment. Even in the darkest silence, God waited, not as judge, but as Father, as the one who knew the soul's name before the world began. In that holy moment, what was guilt becomes understanding, what was fear becomes peace, and what was delay becomes reunion. This is not forgetting the past, it is seeing it through the eyes of eternity. The soul realizes that even its mistakes were not wasted. Because God weaves all things into redemption, it now becomes something new, not a shadow seeking answers, but a light ready to love. From here, many souls begin to intercede. For those they left behind, for the world, because the soul, when filled with grace, can no longer remain still. Have you ever felt protected for no reason? Spared from something you didn't even see coming? Perhaps someone who loved you, long gone, now walks with you from the other side. If this moved you, comment, "I believe in unseen help." And share this message, because someone, somewhere, may be crossing now, and your love could guide them. Not all darkness is absence. Sometimes it's the moment before dawn. And in the soul, that moment is sacred. There is an instant, invisible to time, when everything stops. Not out of fear, but out of surrender. The soul no longer grasps, questions, or flees. It simply says, "I don't know how to return, but I trust." And in that breath, something eternal responds. Not with thunder, but with stillness that speaks. A quiet that says, "You are home." This final light is not a vision, it is presence. A warmth that is older than memory, closer than breath. God, not as image or concept, but as peace that wraps around every part of the soul. Some saints called this moment the divine kiss. Others said it felt like falling into the arms of everything they had ever loved. No more pain, no more questions, only fullness. Here, the soul does not lose itself. It finds itself not as who it was on earth, but as who it was always meant to be. And then, it remembers everything, every moment of grace, every hidden mercy, every time it was carried by prayers it never knew were spoken. Even forgotten kindnesses rise like incense, every thank you left unsaid, every tear turned into intercession. Nothing was wasted, not a second. And in that light the soul becomes prayer. Not the act of praying, but the very essence of love reaching back through the veil. It becomes part of that sacred communion, the eternal family of saints, interceding for those who still walk the earth and whispering, "Don't be afraid, I waited, and now I wait for you." You who pray, you who light a candle not knowing why, you who weep for someone long gone. They may already be with God, but even now they pray for you. Heaven is not far, it is interwoven with every breath, and even the smallest prayer can open the way for a soul to walk toward the light. Comment, "The Lamb has won," if this message reached your spirit. And share this video, not for numbers, but for the souls still waiting for a single moment of grace. Because sometimes, the eternal begins with a whisper from you. Not every message from the invisible comes as a vision. Some arrive quietly, through dreams, scents, or sudden memories. Whispers through the veil, soft signs that reach beyond time. Have you ever dreamed of someone who passed and woke up with the sense that they were truly there? Not imagined, not remembered, but present. St. Thomas Aquinas taught that the soul, once freed from the body, speaks in images, and that during sleep our soul, unburdened by the noise of the day, can listen more clearly. That's why some dreams are more than dreams. They are meetings, sanctioned by heaven, moments of spiritual permission. In these dreams, the soul may not even speak. It might only appear calm, watching, glowing softly, but you wake up with tears and a peace you can't explain, because your soul knows. That was not just memory, That was communion. Other signs come like echoes, a perfume with no source, a sudden wind in a closed room, a song playing at the perfect time. One only that person knew. These are not just coincidences. They are traces of the eternal brushing against the now. Ancient Christian tradition called such moments thin places, where heaven and earth draw near, where the veil becomes sheer, just for an instant, where those who wait can be felt again. But not all signs are sweetness. Some come with a weight. A room grows cold, a photo falls, a clock stops, not to scare, but to ask, do you still remember me? Because to the soul caught between worlds, being forgotten is the deepest ache. The communion of saints was never meant to end at death. It was meant to grow, to stretch across time and dimension, uniting the church above and below. So when you feel a presence, don't rush to explain it away. Pause. Pray. Ask if someone needs to be remembered. Call their name before God. That small act, a single candle lit, a quiet prayer whispered, can open a door for someone still waiting between this world and the next. Even when the soul resists, heaven does not retreat. There are beings whose mission is to wait at the threshold, angels, spiritual companions, voices of mercy sent not to judge, but to remind. The guardian angel does not end its work at the final breath. From the first cry of life to the last sigh, it walks beside us. And even after the veil falls, it continues, not as a forceful guide, but as a presence of unshakable love. Some souls are too confused to recognize this help. Others close their hearts out of fear or shame, but the angel remains, showing images of grace, bringing forth forgotten prayers, whispering hope where only silence remains. There are saints, like Saint Faustina, who spoke of this unseen labor, how the angels accompany souls through their inner purgatory, illuminating not just the path forward, but the truth within. And there are others, intercessors, souls who have crossed the veil but return not to haunt, but to help. A grandmother who prays for the grandchild lost in grief, a spouse who appears in a dream to guide a lonely heart, a soul purified by grace, now sent to awaken another still lost. Heaven works in silence, in whispers, in networks of light and prayer. And when one soul delays, another often comes to offer its hand. Some mystics saw this like a divine tapestry, each soul a thread, each act of mercy a stitch. Where one soul falters, another fills the space. Where one soul resists, another prays them home. These intercessions are not random. They are sacred assignments. Sometimes, the very person you feel in prayer, the name that rises without cause, is the one you were meant to carry. Not out of duty, but out of grace. And sometimes the protection you felt, the peace you couldn't explain, is the return of that favor. A soul you once helped, now helping you. Heaven remembers, even when the earth forgets. So next time you feel called to pray for someone who's passed, listen. It may be more than memory. It may be part of your mission. There comes a final moment, not a moment of ending, but of return. A stillness so complete, it no longer asks anything. No more doors to open, no more names to call. Just presence, just surrender. The soul, once restless, resistant, lost, now stands quiet. Not because it understands everything, but because it no longer needs to. The need to hold, to fear, to explain, melts in the warmth of something greater. And then, without warning, a movement, a shift, a breath, home. Not a place, but a knowing. Not a gate of gold, but a peace that cannot be described. God is not seen. He is felt, like light through every part of the soul, like love deeper than memory, like everything you ever longed for but never knew how to name. And the soul in that embrace understands, I was never forgotten, I was always wanted. The pain makes sense. The silence becomes music. The wait was not in vain. In this holy stillness, the soul does not vanish. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a living prayer, an echo of God's mercy, a flame that intercedes for others still walking the path. You who watch this to the end, perhaps you have felt a soul cross, or maybe you have helped one do so. Through your prayer, your presence, your love, this channel exists for that reason. To keep the light lit for those who still wander in shadow. To remind the living that the dead are not gone. They are waiting, praying, loving. If this message spoke to your spirit, I invite you to join this sacred journey. Subscribe to Bible Stories and Mysteries and activate the bell so that each story finds you right when your soul needs it most. Share this video with someone who still listens for a voice in the silence, and comment, "I believe in the promise," if you believe no soul is ever truly lost, because sometimes eternity begins with a single act of love.